New Year's Eve in Los Angeles. The city glittered with anticipation, fireworks already crackling in the distance, laughter spilling from restaurants and homes. But Lee Jun-hyuk walked alone through the illuminated streets of Koreatown, surrounded by bodyguards yet utterly isolated. The feared Korean Mafia boss, known throughout the city's underworld as the Ice King, carried the weight of absolute power and complete loneliness in equal measure. His tailored black coat hung open, revealing the white shirt beneath, 4 buttons undone as always, exposing the intricate tiger tattoo coiling up his neck, a symbol of strength that felt hollow tonight. At 38, he commanded an empire built on fear and respect, but families crossed the street when they saw him coming. Children hid behind their parents. He was untouchable, unreachable. Across the street, pressed against the frost-covered windows of St. Mary's Orphanage, 2 pairs of brown eyes watched him with an intensity that would change everything. 9-year-old twin sisters Lila and Luna Carter had been observing this lonely man for months, and tonight they'd made a decision that terrified and thrilled them in equal measure. Lila Carter's breath fogged the window as she traced her finger through the condensation, creating a small circle to peer through. Beside her, Luna pressed close, their dark curls, one with beads clicking softly, one in 2 neat braids, touching as they watched the man in the black coat walk past the orphanage for the 3rd time that week. "He's always alone," Luna whispered, her voice carrying that note of sadness that had lived in it since their mother died 5 years ago. "Even with all those scary men around him. Mama said nobody should be alone on New Year's Eve," Lila replied, her hand finding her sister's. At 9 years old, the twins had learned to read people with the sharp awareness of children who'd survived loss too early. And what they saw in Lee Jun-hyuk wasn't the monster the other orphans whispered about. It was loneliness that mirrored their own. Sister Margaret's voice echoed from the common room. "Girls, dinner in 5 minutes. Stop daydreaming at those windows." The twins exchanged a look that needed no words. 5 years of sharing a bunk bed, 5 years of being each other's only family, had created a language between them that transcended speech. Lila's brown eyes sparked with determination. Luna's widened with a mixture of fear and excitement. "We can't," Luna breathed. "If we get caught, Mama's recipe," Lila interrupted, pulling a crumpled, stained index card from her pocket. Their mother's handwriting faded but still legible, sweet potato pie, for New Year's and new beginnings. "Remember what she always said." Luna's fingers trembled as she touched the card. "Food is love, and love shared on New Year's Eve brings blessings for the whole year." "That man needs blessings," Lila stated with the absolute certainty of childhood faith, "and we're going to give them to him." The plan formed quickly, whispered in the dark after lights out. St. Mary's Orphanage, despite Sister Margaret's best efforts, was underfunded and understaffed. The security system was old, the back door lock faulty. The twins knew every creaking floorboard, every shadow that could hide them. They'd been planning their escape for months, not to run away forever, but for one specific purpose. Tonight was the night. At 10:47 p.m., while fireworks began their early celebration across Los Angeles, 2 small figures slipped through the orphanage's back door. Lila carried a worn backpack containing their mother's recipe card, 3 sweet potatoes borrowed from the kitchen, and a battery-powered camping stove they'd found in the storage closet. Luna clutched a small photograph, the last picture of their mother, her warm smile captured forever in faded colors. The winter air bit at their faces as they navigated the darkened streets of Koreatown. They'd watched Lee Jun-hyuk's patterns for months, every New Year's Eve. He walked from his restaurant, the Midnight Garden, to the small memorial park 3 blocks away. He always stopped at the same bench. He always stayed for exactly 1 hour. He was always alone. "What if he says no?" Luna asked as they hurried down an alley, their second-hand coats pulled tight against the cold. "Then we try harder," Lila answered, her jaw set with stubborn hope. "Mama never gave up on nobody. We won't either." Across the city, Lee Jun-hyuk sat in the back of his armored Mercedes, staring at the streets he controlled but never truly inhabited. His driver, Min Jun, knew better than to speak when the boss wore that particular expression, the one that suggested he was somewhere far away, lost in memories that had teeth. "The park, sir," Min Jun asked softly. Jun-hyuk nodded once. his hand unconsciously rising to touch the tiger tattoo on his neck. His father had given him that tattoo the day he became the family's heir, 20 years ago, when he still believed power could fill the emptiness inside him, when he thought fear and respect were sufficient replacements for love. He'd been wrong. The Mercedes pulled up to Memorial Park at 11:03 p.m. Jun Hyuk's security team, 6 men in dark suits, fanned out with practiced efficiency, scanning the shadows, the rooftops, the street corners. This park, this bench, this ritual, it was the one vulnerability Jun Hyuk allowed himself. Once a year he came here to remember everyone he'd lost. His parents, dead in a rival family's attack 15 years ago. His younger sister, killed in the crossfire of a war he'd started in his rage and grief. His grandmother, who'd raised him, who'd taught him that strength without compassion was just brutality wearing a crown. He sat on the cold bench, surrounded by protection but feeling exposed nonetheless. The park was empty, midnight was still an hour away, and most people celebrated indoors on New Year's Eve, just him and his ghosts. Then he heard it, small feet on gravel, quick breathing, the rustle of a backpack. His hand moved to the gun at his waist as his security team tensed, already moving toward the sound. But what emerged from the shadows stopped everyone cold. 2 little black girls, no more than 9 years old, stood frozen at the edge of the lamplight. Identical faces, terror and determination, warring in their expressions. One held a backpack, the other held a photograph like a shield. "Sir," one of his men started, already reaching for them. "Stop." Jun Hyuk's voice cut through the cold air like a blade. His hand lifted, halting his security team mid-step. His eyes, dark and calculating, fixed on the twins with an intensity that should have sent them running. Instead, the girl with the backpack, Lila, stepped forward. Her voice shook, but her words were clear. "Mr. Lee, sir, we know it's New Year's Eve and you're probably real busy being important and scary and all that, but our mama, before she died, she taught us that nobody, and she meant nobody, should spend the new year alone. So we were wondering." She swallowed hard, her sister's hand finding hers. "Would you maybe want to have dinner with us?" Silence crashed over Memorial Park like a wave. Lee Jun-hyuk's security team stood frozen, hands on weapons, unable to process what they'd just witnessed. In 15 years of protecting the Ice King, they'd faced rival gangs, federal agents, and assassination attempts. Never 2 terrified children offering dinner. Jun Hyuk's expression remained unreadable, but inside, something shifted. These children? They'd been following him, watching him. The strategic part of his brain catalogued this as a potential threat, a manipulation, a trap. But the tactical analysis dissolved as he studied their faces. Terror, genuine, bone-deep fear, but also something else, something he hadn't seen directed at him in years. Hope. "You know my name," he said quietly, not a question, a statement that made Lila's grip on her sister's hand tighten. "Everyone knows your name, sir," Luna whispered, her voice barely audible. "You're Lee Jun-hyuk, the Ice King," Lila finished when her sister faltered. "The man who runs Koreatown, the boss everyone's scared of. And yet here you are." Jun-hyuk leaned forward slightly, his elbows on his knees, studying them with the same focus he applied to business negotiations. 2 children alone in the dark, approaching a dangerous man. "Either you're incredibly brave or remarkably foolish." "Mama said being brave and being scared feel exactly the same," Lila replied, her chin lifting despite the tremor in her voice. "The difference is what you do while you're feeling it." Something cracked in Jun Hyuk's chest, a sound, a feeling like ice breaking under pressure. "Your mother sounds wise." "She was," Luna said softly, holding up the photograph. Even in the dim park lighting, Jun Hyuk could see it. A beautiful black woman with the same warm eyes as her daughters, smiling at the camera with a joy that seemed to illuminate the faded print. "She died when we were 4. Pneumonia. We've been at St. Mary's Orphanage ever since." The orphanage. Jun Hyuk knew it. A struggling institution 3 blocks from his restaurant, always on the edge of closure, kept alive by donations his grandmother had arranged years ago. Donations he'd continued out of habit, not sentiment. Or so he'd told himself. "You escaped," he observed. "The sisters must be searching for you." "We left a note," Lila said quickly. Said we'd be back before midnight. We wanted to make you dinner. For New Year's. Why? The question emerged harsher than he'd intended. Why would you risk punishment, danger, everything for a stranger, especially one as lonely as us? Luna finished gently. The words hit Jun-hyuk like a physical blow. His security team exchanged glances. They'd never seen their boss rendered speechless. Min-jun, who'd driven for the family for 30 years, barely suppressed his shock. Jun-hyuk stood slowly, his height imposing despite the lack of threat in his movement. You should go back, now, before you're missed further. We have sweet potatoes, Lila said desperately, pulling her backpack forward, and a camping stove and Mama's recipe. We can cook right here, right now. Please, Mr. Lee. We've been watching you for months, and every time we see you, you look— Her voice broke. You look like we feel inside. And what is that? Jun-hyuk asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Like you lost everyone who mattered, Luna answered, tears sliding down her cheeks. Like you're surrounded by people, but nobody really sees you. Like you're trying real hard to be strong enough that it won't hurt anymore, but it still does. Every single day. The Ice King, the feared Mafia boss who'd stared down federal prosecutors and rival gang leaders without flinching, felt his carefully constructed walls crumbling. These children, they saw him, actually saw him, not the reputation, not the power, not the danger. They saw the grief he carried like armor. Your sisters will be worried, and he managed, his voice rougher than usual. They will, Lila agreed, but Mama's recipe says it takes exactly 43 minutes start to finish. We timed it. We can cook, you can eat, and we'll be back before anyone calls the police. You planned this, Jun-hyuk said, almost impressed despite himself. For 3 months, Luna admitted. Ever since we figured out your New Year's Eve pattern, we knew you'd be here, alone, like always. And you thought sweet potato pie would solve what exactly? He tried for dismissive. Failed. Nothing, Lila said honestly. It won't solve nothing. But Mama said food is love, and love shared on New Year's Eve brings blessings for the whole year. Maybe you don't believe in blessings, Mr. Lee, but we do, and we think you deserve some. Jun-hyuk looked at his security team, hard men who'd seen him commit acts of calculated violence without hesitation. Then at these 2 little girls who'd risked everything to offer him pie and company. The absurdity of the situation should have made him laugh. Instead, it made his chest ache with something he'd thought dead. Min-jun, he said quietly. Clear the park. Create a perimeter. Nobody approaches. His driver's eyes widened. Sir? You heard me. The girls and I require privacy. As his team moved to comply, still visibly shocked, Jun-hyuk gestured to the bench. You have 43 minutes. Show me this recipe worth risking an orphanage escape. The twins' faces lit up like the fireworks beginning to paint the sky above Los Angeles. Lila immediately began unpacking the camping stove with the efficiency of someone who'd practiced this exact moment 100 times in her imagination. Luna carefully set the photograph of their mother on the bench between them, a silent inclusion of the woman whose wisdom had orchestrated this impossible meeting. First, Lila said, her hands already peeling sweet potatoes with a borrowed knife. Mama always said you gotta peel them with love. The potato knows if you're rushing. The potato knows, Jun-hyuk repeated, deadpan. Mama swore it, Luna said seriously. She said food made with impatience tastes bitter no matter what the recipe says. Against every instinct, every rule he'd built his life upon, Lee Jun-hyuk felt the corner of his mouth lift. It wasn't quite a smile, not yet, but it was something, a crack in the ice, a beginning, The camping stove's blue flame cast dancing shadows across Memorial Park, as Lila and Luna worked with the focused intensity of generals executing a battle plan. Jun-hyuk watched from the bench, his analytical mind cataloguing every movement, the way Lila measured ingredients with her mother's recipe card held in one hand like scripture, how Luna hummed under her breath while stirring, a melody that sounded like a lullaby worn smooth by repetition. You do this often? He asked. Cook on camping stoves in public parks? We practice in the orphanage basement, Lila admitted, checking the temperature with her hand hovering over the pot. Sister Margaret lets us use the old kitchen equipment if we clean up real good. Says keeping Mama's recipes alive is important. Says it's how we honor her. Luna added brown sugar to the mixture, her movements precise. We make her sweet potato pie every year on New Year's Eve. Then we share it with the other kids who don't got nobody. There's always at least a few. So I'm this year's charity case, Junhyuk observed, but without edge. No, sir, Luna said firmly, meeting his eyes with unexpected courage. You're this year's blessing. There's a difference. Explain it to me. The twins exchanged one of their wordless looks, a complete conversation in a single glance. Lila spoke first. Charity is when you give to people you think are less than you. Blessing is when you share with people because you recognize they're just as human as you are. Mama said we're all broken somewhere, all lonely sometimes. Blessings are just broken people helping other broken people remember they ain't alone in it. Junhyuk felt something in his chest constrict. Your mother was a wise woman. She was a nurse, Luna said proudly, at County Hospital. She worked night shifts so she could be with us during the day. She was tired all the time, but she never complained. Not once. She sounds strong. She was, Lila agreed, her voice thick. But strong don't always save you. She got pneumonia from working too hard. By the time they caught it, it was too late. She made us promise before she died that we'd take care of each other. That we'd remember her recipes, that we'd keep sharing them. She said as long as we fed people with love, she'd never really be gone. The pie was taking shape now, the scent of cinnamon and nutmeg mixing with the crisp winter air. Across Los Angeles, fireworks continued their sporadic celebration, but here in Memorial Park, surrounded by bodyguards maintaining a respectful distance, 3 people existed in a bubble outside time. What about your people? Luna asked suddenly, her boldness surprising even her sister. You got family, Mr. Lee. The question should have been intrusive, should have triggered Junhyuk's instinct to shut down, to redirect, to intimidate. Instead, he found himself answering with a honesty that unsettled him. I had family, he said quietly. Parents, a sister, a grandmother who raised me when they died. His hand rose unconsciously to the tiger tattoo on his neck. My grandmother gave me this, said the tiger protects what it loves with everything it has. She wanted me to remember that strength isn't just about power, it's about protecting the people who matter. What happened to her? Lila asked gently. She died 3 years ago. Heart attack. Quick. Painless. Junhyuk's jaw tightened. I was in Tokyo closing a business deal. I didn't make it back in time to say goodbye. Luna's small hand found his, tentative, brief, but deliberate. We didn't get to say goodbye to Mama neither. Sometimes we dream she's still here. Sometimes it's nice. Sometimes it makes waking up hurt worse. Yes, Junhyuk breathed. Exactly that. The pie finished cooking at 1 p.m., exactly 43 minutes, just as Lila had promised. The twins had brought paper plates and plastic forks in their backpack, along with 3 napkins and a small candle that Luna lit with shaking hands. Mama always said you gotta make a wish when you share New Year's Eve pie, she explained. Setting the candle in the center of their makeshift table, Junhyuk's coat spread across the bench like a tablecloth. You light the candle, you make your wish, then you share the food, and the wish comes true. Or at least, it's got a better chance. I don't believe in wishes, Junhyuk said automatically. That's okay, Lila replied, cutting the pie into 3 equal pieces with the seriousness of a surgeon. We'll believe enough for all of us. They ate in companionable silence, the simple sweetness of the pie carrying flavors that had nothing to do with ingredients, love, memory, hope, grief. Junhyuk, who dined regularly in Michelin-starred restaurants, who had personal chefs and imported delicacies, had never tasted anything quite like this. Your mother was talented, he said finally. She said cooking was science and magic mixed together, Luna explained. Science in the measurements and timing, magic in the intention. If you cook with love, people taste it. If you cook with anger, they taste that too. And what did you cook this with? Junhyuk asked. The twins looked at each other, then at him. Hope, they said in unison. At 11:54 p.m., Junhyuk's phone buzzed. Min Jun, discreet but urgent. Sir, the orphanage has called the police. 2 missing children. They're organizing a search. Junhyuk's decision took less than a second. Tell them the children are safe. I'm returning them personally. He stood, brushing crumbs from his expensive coat. The twins immediately began packing up with practiced efficiency, no trace of their meal left behind except the memory. "You shouldn't have done this," Junhyuk said as they walked toward his Mercedes, his security team falling in around them like shadows. "It was dangerous, reckless." "Yes, sir," Lila agreed. "But was it worth it?" Junhyuk looked down at these two small girls, who'd somehow seen past every wall he'd built, who'd offered him pie and companionship without asking for anything in return, who'd risked punishment and fear because they believed, truly believed, that no one should be alone on New Year's Eve. "Get in the car," he said gruffly. "We have 6 minutes to get you back before midnight." But as they climbed into the Mercedes, Luna whispered to her sister loud enough for Junhyuk to hear. He didn't answer the question. No, he hadn't, because the answer terrified him. Yes, it had been worth it. More than worth it. It had been everything. The Mercedes pulled up to St. Mary's Orphanage at 11:58 p.m., precisely 2 minutes before midnight. The building blazed with lights, every window illuminated, police cars parked haphazardly in front, officers coordinating with distraught staff members. Sister Margaret stood on the front steps, her face a mixture of fury, relief, and exhaustion that spoke to 5 hours of frantic searching. Then she saw Lee Jun-hyuk's car. Her expression shifted to something approaching cardiac arrest. "Stay in the vehicle," Jun-hyuk commanded. But Lila and Luna were already moving, their hands finding each other as they prepared to face consequences they'd known were coming. "It'll be okay," Lila whispered to her sister. "We did the right thing." "Will it, though?" Luna asked, her earlier bravery crumbling as reality crashed in. "We broke so many rules, Lila. What if they separate us?" "What if—" "I won't let that happen." The words emerged from Jun-hyuk's mouth before his brain had approved them. 3 heads turned, the twins in shock, Min-jun in his rearview mirror with raised eyebrows that spoke volumes. "Sir?" Min-jun ventured carefully. Jun-hyuk didn't answer. He was already exiting the vehicle, his presence causing an immediate ripple effect. Police officers reached for weapons. Sister Margaret descended the steps like an avenging angel. Orphanage staff gathered at windows, whispering urgently. The feared Mafia boss walked directly to the passenger door and opened it himself, extending his hand to help the twins out with a courtesy that made Sister Margaret pause mid-stride. "Sister Margaret," Jun-hyuk said, his voice carrying the authority of a man accustomed to commanding rooms, "I believe these two belong to you." The nun's eyes, sharp despite her 70-plus years, scanned the twins head to toe, cataloguing every detail. No injuries, no distress beyond normal fear of punishment. Clean, fed, protected. She'd been expecting the worst for 5 hours. This wasn't it. "Mr. Lee," she said carefully, her Irish accent thickening with stress. "Would you mind explaining why 2 of my girls were in your vehicle at midnight on New Year's Eve?" "They invited me to dinner," Jun-hyuk replied simply. I accepted. The silence that followed could have frozen the San Gabriel Mountains. A police lieutenant stepped forward, hand on his holstered weapon. "Sir, we are going to need more explanation than—" "Lieutenant Park." Jun-hyuk's tone could have cut glass. "These children are safe, unharmed, and accounted for. I suggest you and your men return to actual emergencies." Sister Margaret held up a hand before the situation could escalate. "Officers, thank you for your rapid response. I'll handle this from here. I believe Mr. Lee and I need a conversation." The police dispersed reluctantly, leaving muttered speculation in their wake. The orphanage staff gradually retreated, though curious faces remained pressed against windows. Sister Margaret, the twins, and Jun-hyuk stood in a triangle of tension on the front steps. "Inside," Sister Margaret commanded. "All of you. Now." Her office was small, cramped with filing cabinets and children's artwork, smelling of coffee and old books. Lila and Luna sat together in a single chair, hands clasped, while Jun-hyuk stood with his back to the wall, a defensive position even in this unlikely battlefield. 5 hours, Sister Margaret began, her voice trembling with suppressed emotion. 5 hours I've been organizing search parties, calling hospitals, imagining every terrible thing that could happen to 2 9-year-old black girls alone in Los Angeles on New Year's Eve. She turned to the twins, tears in her eyes. "Do you have any idea what you put us through?" "Yes, ma'am," they whispered in unison, genuine remorse on their faces. "We're sorry," Lila added. "We didn't mean to scare nobody. We had to do it. Had to invite a known criminal, no offense, Mr. Lee, to dinner. Sister Margaret's tone could have stripped paint. Had to escape from a locked orphanage. Nobody should spend New Year's Eve alone. Luna's voice, small but steady, cut through the nun's tirade. Mama said, "She made us promise, Sister Margaret. You know she did. You were there." The fight drained from Sister Margaret like water through a sieve. Her shoulders sagged. "I was there, I remember. Your mother made a lot of promises to a lot of people before she died. But this, girls, this was so dangerous, so reckless." "With respect, sister," Jun Hyuk interjected quietly, "they were never in danger from me, and I'm supposed to take the word of, forgive me, Los Angeles' most notorious crime boss on faith." Sister Margaret's laugh was bitter. "Mr. Lee, I appreciate your donations to this orphanage, truly. They've kept us afloat many times. But these are children in my care, children who've already lost everything. I won't risk them for anyone." "Then don't." Jun Hyuk moved forward, his intensity filling the small office. "Give them to me." The words hung in the air like smoke. Sister Margaret froze. The twins' heads snapped up, hope and disbelief warring on their faces. "Excuse me?" Sister Margaret breathed. "You said they've lost everything, that you're responsible for them, that this orphanage is barely surviving." Jun Hyuk's words came faster now, driven by something he didn't quite understand, a certainty that felt both terrifying and inevitable. "I can give them stability, education, protection, everything they need. You're offering to adopt them." Sister Margaret's voice was flat with shock. "Yes, you, a single man, a criminal, a man who lost his entire family," Jun Hyuk interrupted, his voice raw. "A man who's been alone for 3 years because he thought power was enough. A man who just spent 43 minutes eating sweet potato pie with 2 children who saw him, actually saw him, and decided he was worth saving." His hand rose to his neck tattoo again. "My grandmother told me the tiger protects what it loves. These girls, they invited me to dinner knowing who I am, what I am. They offered me hope without asking for anything in return. They treated me like a human being instead of a threat. I won't fail them the way I failed everyone else." Sister Margaret looked at the twins. "Is this what you want?" Lila and Luna's answer came in stereo, immediate and absolute. Yes. Outside, midnight arrived. Fireworks exploded across Los Angeles, painting the sky in brilliant colors. The new year had begun, and with it, everything changed. The adoption process, Jun Hyuk discovered, made hostile business negotiations look simple. Over the next 3 months, he navigated social workers, background checks, home inspections, and bureaucratic mazes that would have broken lesser men. His organization's resources helped: legal teams, character witnesses, strategic donations. But mostly it was the twins themselves who tipped the scales. "He comes every day," Lila told the social worker during her evaluation. "Every single day since New Year's Eve. Even when he's busy. Even when he's got important mob stuff, business meetings." Her quick correction made the social worker hide a smile. "He brings us books and teaches us Korean words and listens when we talk about mama." Luna added quietly, "He remembers things, like how I don't like mushrooms, and Lila gets scared during thunderstorms. He remembers the little stuff that people usually forget about kids like us." The social worker, Mrs. Chen, a formidable woman who'd seen every manipulation tactic imaginable, studied Lee Jun Hyuk during his interview with the sharp focus of a predator assessing prey. "Mr. Lee, let's be direct. You run a criminal organization. You've been investigated by the FBI. You have documented connections to violence, extortion, and racketeering." She leaned forward. "Why should I believe you'd provide a safe, stable environment for 2 traumatized children?" Jun Hyuk met her gaze without flinching. "Because I understand loss in ways most adoptive parents don't. I know what it's like to have everything ripped away, to build walls so high you forget what warmth feels like, to convince yourself that power and control can substitute for love." He paused. "Those girls climbed my walls in 43 minutes with nothing but sweet potato pie and honest compassion. They didn't fix me. They showed me I was worth fixing. I want to do the same for them." Pretty words. "I'm not offering words. I'm offering my life." Jun Hyuk pulled out documents, transfer of his primary assets into a trust for the twins, restructuring of his business interests, plans for legitimate enterprises. I've started divesting from questionable ventures, creating legal revenue streams. Yes, it'll take years. Yes, there are aspects of my past I can't erase, but I can build a different future, with them, for them. Mrs. Chen's expression softened fractionally. And if they want normal, PTA meetings and soccer games and boring suburban existence, then I'll learn to be boring. Junhyuk's lips quirked in something almost like a smile. I've mastered hostile takeovers and international negotiations. I believe I can handle carpools and parent-teacher conferences. On March 15, 2025, exactly 2.5 months after that New Year's Eve dinner, Lila and Luna Carter became Lila and Luna Carter Lee. The adoption ceremony took place in a modest courtroom, with Sister Margaret crying into tissues, Mrs. Chen smiling despite her professional demeanor, and Min Jun standing as an official witness with barely concealed emotion. Jun Hyuk, wearing his signature white shirt with 4 buttons undone and his tiger tattoo visible, knelt before the twins and made a promise that echoed his grandmother's wisdom. I will protect what I love with everything I have. You are mine now, and I am yours. We're family. The twins, wearing matching dresses that Sister Margaret had somehow acquired, threw their arms around their new father with a force that nearly knocked him over. For the first time in 3 years, Lee Jun-hyuk, the Ice King, the feared Mafia boss, let tears fall unchecked. The house Jun-hyuk purchased surprised everyone. Not a fortress in Koreatown, not a mansion in Beverly Hills, but a comfortable home in Pasadena with a yard, good schools nearby, and neighbors who watched out for each other. He'd chosen it specifically because Lila had mentioned wanting a tree swing, and the property had a perfect oak tree in the backyard. The first night in their new home, the twins stood in their bedroom, actually decorated for children, with twin beds covered in colorful quilts and shelves for books, and a window seat for reading, and Luna whispered, "Is this real?" "It's real," Jun-hyuk answered from the doorway, his arms full of bedtime storybooks. "This is your home. Forever." "You won't send us back?" Lila asked, voicing the fear that haunted every foster child. "Never." Jun-hyuk set down the books and sat on the edge of Luna's bed, gesturing for Lila to join them. "You're stuck with me now, through bad grades and teenage rebellion and whatever else comes. I'm your father. That's not a temporary arrangement." "Even if we mess up?" Luna pressed. "Especially when you mess up. That's when family matters most." He paused, choosing his words carefully. "I need you to understand something. My past, the things I've done, the reputation I carry, that won't disappear overnight. There will be challenges, people who judge you because of me, situations that aren't fair or easy." "We know," Lila said simply. "But Mama taught us that family ain't about being perfect. It's about showing up. You showed up, Mr. Lee, I mean Dad, every day for 3 months, even when it was hard." "Especially when it was hard," Luna added, echoing his earlier words back to him. Jun-hyuk felt his chest constrict with an emotion he was still learning to name. Love. Paternal, protective, overwhelming love. "Your mother was right about many things. Food is love. No one should be alone on New Year's Eve. And family, real family, shows up." That night, he read them stories until they fell asleep, their hands finding each other even in unconsciousness the way twins do. He sat watching them for a long time, these 2 small girls who'd saved him with sweet potato pie and stubborn hope. His phone buzzed. Min Jun checking in. "All secure, sir, perimeter clear. The girls safe?" Jun-hyuk typed back, "They're home, we all are." For the first time in 3 years, possibly in his entire adult life, Lee Jun-hyuk felt the ice around his heart thaw completely. The tiger tattoo on his neck, his grandmother's reminder to protect what he loved, no longer felt like a burden. It felt like a promise fulfilled. Outside, Los Angeles continued its endless rhythm. Inside, a former Mafia boss tucked blankets around his daughters and whispered words his own father had once said to him. "Sleep well, little ones. I'm here. I'll always be here." And he meant it, with everything he had. 1 year later, New Year's Eve 2025. The kitchen of the Pasadena house smelled of sweet potatoes, cinnamon, and new beginnings. Lila and Luna, now 10 years old, confident in their safety, thriving in their new life, worked on their mother's recipe with practiced hands. But this year, they weren't alone. Jun Hyuk stood at the counter carefully measuring brown sugar under Lila's critical supervision. More than that, Dad. Mama's recipe says generous portions for the sweet stuff. Your mother clearly never worried about diabetes, Jun Hyuk replied, but he added more sugar anyway. Luna hummed while stirring, the same melody she'd hummed in Memorial Park a year ago, but now it sounded different, less like a lullaby for grief, more like a song of joy. Sister Margaret sat at the kitchen table, watching the scene with undisguised satisfaction. She'd become a regular visitor, an unofficial grandmother who brought wisdom and terrible puns in equal measure. "You've done well, Jun Hyuk," she said softly. "Better than I imagined." "They did the hard work," he replied, his hand finding Luna's shoulder in an unconscious gesture of affection. "I just showed up." "You showed up every day," Lila corrected. "That's what matters." At midnight they'd share the pie, a tradition now sacred in its simplicity. They'd light a candle, make wishes, and welcome the new year together. No one would be alone. Not anymore. The Ice King had melted. In his place stood a father, a protector, a man redeemed by two 9-year-old girls who'd refused to let him disappear into his loneliness. Family, Jun Hyuk had learned, wasn't about blood or perfection. It was about sweet potato pie shared with open hearts. It was about showing up, again and again and again, forever.